Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
Well, I'll tell you, as I said at the top of the show, on this one point, I think the president is dead right, just this once. Let Biden be Biden. Here to talk about it is a real expert, distinguished former national security advisor, my great friend Robert O'Brien. What do you think, Robert? I mean, he was unequivocal. What do you think about this?
Look, you remember the Reagan years, Larry, and you were in the White House back in those days when we used to say, let Reagan be Reagan.
Yes.
I never thought I'd say, let Biden be Biden.
Yes.
But as soon as he said it, of course, his staff went back and tried to walk it back. He's now said this twice. He said it earlier, and his staff walked it back and said he didn't mean it. He's now said it, and he was very emphatic about it. And the staff said, well, you know, they walked it back and they said there's no change of policy. The American people need to understand that Taiwan is critically important to us. It's critically important from a geopolitical standpoint. It's right. It would split China and it would split Japan, our allies to the south, South Korea, Australia, the Philippines, Thailand, New Zealand. It would give China access to the whole Pacific, but also for our economy. And I know you were talking about the recession earlier. You know, they make all the chips. So whether it's your dishwasher or your car or your cell phone or military equipment, all those, you know, sophisticated chips are made in China and Taiwan. So to let China take Taiwan would be a massive defeat for us. And I'm glad the president got out there ahead of it and told the Chinese that if you do this, there's going to be war. Maybe if we would have done that with Putin, we wouldn't have had the invasion of Ukraine. Yes.
That's a great point. I know right now, whether Mr. Biden did it deliberately or not, all right, the fact is, with the Russia-Ukraine story, and some of that rubs off onto Xi and Taiwan, his timing for a change, I thought, was just about right. And Robert, one other point. There are other facets to this Asian trip that he made, but one other point. The Taiwan Relations Act and related acts don't rule out military assistance. The One China Act, the One China Commitment, whatever, doesn't explicitly rule out military assistance, I think.
No, you're right about that, Larry. And the problem is we haven't given the Taiwanese everything they need. And again, it sounds very much like what happened with Putin. We didn't want to give the Ukrainians the javelins under the Obama administration because that would provoke Putin. We haven't wanted to give the Taiwanese everything they need because that would provoke Xi. You don't provoke these dictators. We need to start listening to what they say. Putin said he was going to invade Ukraine. We watched him invade Georgia. We watched him invade Ukraine back in 2014. He's now threatening the Balkans and the Baltics and the Caucasus and even Finland. You know, all these different regions. And Xi Jinping says he's going to unify China with Taiwan one way or the other. So we need to help the Taiwanese under the Taiwan Relations Act and otherwise do everything they can to defend themselves, to deter Xi. That's how we stop a war. It's peace through strength. If we deter them and give them the tools and equipment and platforms they need to defend themselves, that'll stop an invasion before it even happens.
One thing that doesn't sound too good, and I don't know how this is going to be resolved or whether it came up a lot regarding this Asian trip, but inside Biden world, they're talking about pulling the Trump tariffs from China. What you think of that?
Well, it'd be a terrible idea. And Larry, this is more your area of expertise than mine. But, you know, it was those tariffs that got the Chinese to come to the table to get us our phase one trade deal. And if it hadn't been for the tariffs, the Chinese would have slow rolled and would have avoided making any reforms to their economy and stopped stealing our intellectual property. And none of that would have happened. And yet they've even ignored now the phase one deal. They blame it on COVID, but they're not living up to their obligations. And so we shouldn't remove any tariffs until the Chinese live up to their obligations. That's the leverage we've got on them. If we take the tariffs off, there's zero leverage left on the Chinese, and that would be a bad mistake. And I think there's a split in the administration. I think there are folks, including the current trade rep, that understand that. But then we've got panda huggers that are still hanging around from the Obama and the Clinton administrations that think, believe in China America instead of America first, and they want to lift the tariffs, and we shouldn't do it. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, lifting those tariffs would be a terrible idea in economic and trade terms and also national security terms or national security signaling. Robert O'Brien, what else? I mean, you've been writing about the need for the U.S. to pay a lot of attention to the Indo-Pacific This was a trip to the Indo-Pacific. Did they get anything done? Did they, besides the Taiwan thing, where Biden got one right? You agree? I agree with you. But anything else that he, American strength, we're going to stand behind him? What happened on this trip? Anything?
Well, look, it was good that he went out to see our allies. And as Winston Churchill said, the only thing worse than fighting with allies is fighting without allies. And we need allies as China continues to rise and threatens Taiwan. And so it was good that he was going out to see the new president in South Korea, to see Prime Minister Kishida, to see the new Prime Minister of Australia. But the Chinese are watching more than these diplomatic goodwill gestures. The Chinese are watching to see what we do with our Navy, what we do with our Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Army. And we've come out with a plan now that's going to eliminate 26 ships over the next couple of years from the U.S. Navy. Instead of having the 355-ship Navy that we budgeted for in the Trump administration, they want to go down to 280 ships. That's going to be about half the size of the Chinese Navy. The Chinese Navy just keeps pumping out new destroyers every week. And so the Chinese are watching this going, how serious are they about defending Taiwan? How serious are they about the Indo-Pacific when they're going to give up more ships in the next couple of years than the Japanese sunk at Pearl Harbor? This is a self-inflicted Pearl Harbor, this new defense budget. So if we don't get this right, it doesn't matter how much good diplomacy we do, how many trips to the region the president makes. We've got to show that we're standing behind our allies with muscle, because that's the only thing that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin appreciate.
Muscle. Boy, you're right about that. Robert O'Brien, former National Security Advisor. Thank you, sir. Talk soon.